The phone rang at 3:47 a.m. Colonel Marcus Dane didn't answer. He sat in his kitchen, staring at the device as it vibrated against the wooden table. The sound seemed to echo through his empty house like a death rattle. By dawn, 17 news vans lined his street. "Military hero orders a deadly strike on civilians," screamed the headline across his neighbor's tablet. The old man who'd saluted him every morning for 12 years wouldn't meet his eyes. Marcus had 37 years of service, 3 Purple Hearts, a Congressional Medal of Honor. None of it mattered now that the stick from his oak tree hit the ground with a hollow thud. Even the birds had stopped singing. 3 weeks earlier, Marcus had been untouchable. The Pentagon briefing room fell silent when he entered. 4 stars gleamed on his shoulders like promises. Senators requested his counsel. Presidents took his calls. "Sir," Lieutenant Hayes had said, sliding the intelligence report across the mahogany table. "Target confirmed. High-value asset. Minimal collateral damage expected." Marcus studied the aerial photos. The warehouse sat in a cluster of buildings. Women and children lived in the surrounding structures, but the intel was solid. The terrorist cell was planning something catastrophic. He had 30 seconds to decide. "Execute," he said. The word came out clean, sharp, like every order he'd given for nearly 4 decades. But intelligence was wrong. The warehouse held displaced families. 43 souls who'd lost everything to war and were simply trying to survive another night. The explosion lit up the desert sky like a second sun. Then came the screams. Then came the silence. Colonel Dane knew. Senator Williams jabbed his finger at the camera. He knew, and he fired anyway. Marcus sat in his study, watching himself get destroyed on every channel. His wife had left for her sister's house in Delaware. His daughter hadn't returned his calls in 6 days. The protesters gathered outside the Pentagon gates. Their signs read "Baby Killer" and "Justice for the Innocent." One woman held a photo of a child who died in the blast. She stood there for hours, just holding that picture. Marcus drove past them every morning. Her eyes followed his car like a ghost. The investigation was swift, the committee brutal. General Morrison, his oldest friend, testified against him. The man who'd stood beside him in Afghanistan, who'd saved his life in Iraq, who'd been best man at his wedding. "The colonel acted without proper verification," Morrison said into the microphone. His voice was steady. "Professional. He violated protocol." Marcus felt something break inside his chest. Not his heart that had shattered weeks ago, something deeper. Something that held him together. The discharge papers arrived on a Tuesday. Honorable, but that word felt like a lie. 6 months later, Marcus stood at a podium in the national press club, no stars on his shoulders now. Just a man in a gray suit, facing a room full of cameras and judgment. His hands shook as he unfolded his statement. "I killed innocent people," he began. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed like lightning. Marcus waited. The chaos settled into silence. "I killed innocent people," he repeated. 43 human beings who trusted America to protect them, who believed in us, who died because I made a choice in 30 seconds that I'll regret for the rest of my life." His voice cracked. "I've spent 6 months trying to find excuses. The bad intelligence, the pressure, the impossible situation. But there are no excuses. There's only responsibility. And I take full responsibility for what I did." He looked directly into the camera. "I especially want to speak to Amara Hassan. You've stood outside the Pentagon for 178 days holding your son's picture. I know because I've counted every single day. Your boy was 7 years old. He liked to draw pictures of birds. He wanted to be a pilot someday." The room was dead silent. "Now I stole his someday. I stole all their somedays. And I'm sorry doesn't bring them back. It doesn't heal your heart. It doesn't make me less of a killer, but it's the only thing I have left to give." Tears ran down his face. He didn't wipe them away. "I'm sorry." Asterisk, what happened next changed everything. Dr. Sarah Chun, the Pentagon's chief intelligence analyst, requested an emergency meeting with the press. She'd been silent during the investigation, protected by classification levels and government lawyers. Now, she sat in the same room where Marcus had confessed. Her hands trembled as she opened a classified folder. "Colonel Dane received his intelligence from my department," she said. What he didn't know, what we didn't tell him, was that we had conflicting reports. 3 separate sources indicated the warehouse contained civilians. But we buried those reports. The room exploded again. We buried them because we were under pressure to act. Because we'd been tracking this terrorist cell for 18 months. Because we couldn't afford to lose them again. She pulled out a document, held it up for the cameras. "This is the full intelligence report. The one we should have given the colonel. The one that clearly stated civilian presence was not only possible but probable." Her voice broke. Marcus Dane made his decision with 30 seconds and incomplete information. We had 3 days and chose to hide the truth. He's been carrying guilt that belongs to us. Asterisk, the complete story unraveled like a ball of yarn in the wind. The terrorist cell was real. The threat was imminent. But the intelligence apparatus had failed catastrophically. Multiple departments had pieces of the puzzle. None shared with the others. Marcus had been given a choice between 2 versions of hell: act on incomplete information or let potential terrorists escape to kill thousands. He'd chosen to act. And when it went wrong, he'd chosen to take responsibility. System had chosen to let him fall. General Morrison testified again. This time, his voice shook. "Marcus Dane is the most honorable man I've ever served with. He fell on his sword to protect the institution. He protected all of us, and we let him." The investigation was reopened. The real culprits were identified. Careers ended. Heads rolled, but Marcus had already lost everything. Asterisk 6 months after his confession, Marcus worked at a construction site in Virginia. Dawn to dusk, building homes for families who'd lost everything. He never spoke about his service, never mentioned the medals. Just showed up every morning and did the work. His coworkers knew something was different about him. The way he carried himself. The way he treated everyone with respect. The way he never complained, never cut corners, never took credit for others' work. "There's something about that guy," Jimmy, the foreman, told his wife. "Can't put my finger on it, but he's got character, real character." Marcus lived in a small apartment above a diner. He sent his entire paycheck to a fund he'd established for the families of those who died. He kept just enough to survive. Every morning, he walked past the same newsstand. The owner, an elderly Korean War veteran named Pete, always nodded. Never spoke, just nodded. Until one Tuesday morning. "I know who you are," Pete said quietly. Marcus froze. "You're the one who stood up, who told the truth, who took the blame that wasn't yours." Marcus started to walk away. "Son," Pete called after him, "that's what heroes do." Asterisk, the call came from the White House. President Martinez had been following the investigation. She'd read every report, every testimony, every piece of evidence. She'd learned about Marcus's construction job, his anonymous donations, his quiet dignity in the face of public humiliation. "Colonel Dane," she said when he answered the phone. "This is your president. I need to see you." Marcus hung up. "Thought it was a prank." She called back. "I'm sending a car," she said. "It's time to restore your honor." The ceremony was private. No cameras, no press. Just the president, the Secretary of Defense, and a handful of senior officials who knew the truth. "President," Martinez pinned 4 stars back on his shoulders. "You've been promoted to general," she said. "Retroactive to the day you were discharged." with full benefits, full pension, and a formal apology from the United States government. Marcus's hands shook as she placed the Medal of Freedom around his neck. For exceptional service to country and unwavering commitment to accountability. And truth, but it was her next words that broke him. The 43 people who died were not your victims, General. They were casualties of a system that failed them. And you've honored their memory by carrying their burden. By never letting us forget. By showing us what real leadership looks like. The story broke on a Thursday. Hero betrayed by system he served ran across every major outlet. The full truth emerged. The cover-up, the sacrificial lamb. The man who'd chosen honor over self-preservation. Amara Hassan, the mother who'd held vigil outside the Pentagon, requested a meeting with Marcus. They sat in a quiet cafe in Arlington. She slid a photograph across the table. Her son, smiling, holding a paper airplane. "I hated you," she said. "For 267 days, I hated you with everything I had." Marcus nodded. "But then I learned the truth about what really happened. About how you were betrayed. About how you've been living." She reached across the table and took his hand. "My son would have forgiven you. He had a good heart. He would have understood that good men sometimes find themselves in impossible situations." Tears ran down both their faces. "I forgive you," she whispered. "And I'm sorry. I'm sorry they made you carry this alone." General Marcus Dane returned to active duty, but not to the Pentagon. He requested assignment to a small base in Colorado, training young officers in ethics and decision-making. His first class was 22. Lieutenants, fresh out of West Point, they sat at attention, wondering what this four-star general was doing in a classroom instead of commanding armies. "Anyone know why I'm here?" Marcus asked. Silence. "I'm here because I made a terrible mistake. I killed innocent people. And I want to make sure you never find yourselves in the same situation." He told them everything. The decision. The cover-up. The fall. The truth. "Leadership isn't about being right," he said. "It's about being responsible. For your decisions. For your people. For the consequences of your actions." He pointed to the Medal of Freedom on the wall behind his desk. "This medal isn't for being a hero. It's for being human. For showing that even when the system fails, even when everyone abandons you, even when the truth might destroy you, you still choose to do what's right." The young officers leaned forward. "That's what real honor looks like." 5 years later. Marcus's story was taught in military academies around the world. Not as a cautionary tale about the fog of war, but as an example of what integrity looked like when everything else fell apart. The construction company, where he'd worked for 6 months, dedicated their annual charity build to the families affected by the warehouse strike. They called it the Dane Foundation Build. Pete, the newsstand owner, kept a framed photo of Marcus in his shop. Under it, a simple sign: "This is what a hero looks like." President Martinez, in her memoir, wrote, "In 30 years of public service, I've never met anyone who embodied the true meaning of accountability like General Marcus Dane. He didn't just take responsibility for his actions. He took responsibility for our failures. He carried our shame so we could learn to be better." But perhaps the most powerful testament came from Lieutenant Sarah Kim, one of his first students, who wrote in her graduation speech, "General Dane taught us that honor isn't about never falling down. It's about how you get back up. It's about who you choose to be when everything is stripped away. It's about standing in the truth even when the truth is ugly and painful and makes you the villain in everyone else's story." Marcus never returned to the Pentagon, never sought the spotlight, never wrote a book or gave paid speeches about his experience. He remained at that small base in Colorado, teaching young officers about the weight of command and the price of integrity. He lived simply, gave generously, and carried the memory of 43 strangers who died because systems failed and humans are fallible. Every morning, he walked past the memorial he'd built on the base. 43 stones, each engraved with a name, each representing a life cut short by the impossible mathematics of war. He never stopped saying their names, because that's what real heroes do. They remember. They carry the weight. They make sure. The fallen are never forgotten. And they teach the next generation to be better than the system that came before. The oak tree in his backyard grew tall and strong. Birds nested in its branches. And sometimes, on quiet mornings, you could hear them singing songs of redemption and hope. The stick that had fallen that terrible morning. Marcus had planted it, and it grew into something beautiful. Just like the man who'd chosen honor over comfort, truth over convenience, and responsibility over blame. That's the kind of hero America needs. That's the kind of hero Marcus Dane became.